Welcome to Agape Night. How you guys doing? If it's your first time here, my name is Ruben.
I'm Dora.
And we are so happy to have you here today.
So if you have never been here before, Agape Night is a night where we take some time to talk about relationships. Whether you're dating, you're married, you're single but looking, it's kind of all over the spectrum. And we talk about things that are important to you and how you can actually grow in relationship and have a healthy relationship. So today's topic is things we would tell you as relationship counselors if we weren't afraid to hurt your feelings.
This one, I low-key was like, I don't know who's gonna come today because we're gonna step on toes a little bit.
So it was born out of I scroll a lot on TikTok and on Instagram.
Yeah, this is how she, legit. We were like, okay, what are we talking about this Agape Night? Because I'm not gonna lie, it kind of creeped up on me because this month has been crazy. And Dora's like, I saw this idea on TikTok.
Yeah, so I've seen it with your dentist will be like, things I wasn't afraid to tell you as a dentist, whatever, if I wasn't afraid to hurt your feelings, or your dermatologist would say it, or your whatever. So it came up kind of top of mind to me, and I thought there are some hard truths that, when it comes to relationships, sometimes we don't want to hear these things. And a lot of the time, it's because, if we're honest, it means more work on our part. It could mean that, we have to take some ownership over some of our own issues. And so when it comes to relationship counseling, like when we counsel couples, a lot of the time we're very careful about, there are some people that you have to be mindful that you're going to take your time. You're going to ease into these hard topics. But in an avenue like this, we thought we'd just share some of them with you guys. And because you have opportunities to ask questions and discuss later, then, it would be a good opportunity to just kind of give you a teaser on some of the things that people may not consider or may not know about when they enter a relationship or when they're dating or married.
Yeah, so if you're uncomfortable today, it's kind of the point. That's okay. Okay, if you nudge your neighbor, that's okay too.
But try not to do that. Try to take things for yourself today.
All right, first one. Number one of the worst things you can do for your marriage, or honestly walking into your relationship, is having separate bank accounts, or having this mindset of, let's just split the cost, 50-50. Don't put your hands up, but let's be honest, some of us do. Maybe we think this way. I don't know. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm just not talking to the right crowd here. But there are a lot of people that do believe that it's a healthy thing to actually have separate bank accounts. Independency, being able to control your own money and what you bring in. And I find this is where so much chaos happens. This is where mistrust, distrust, this is where deception, this is where all sorts of stuff starts to happen. It's where relationships really start to break down. I mean, the stats are pretty clear. I don't even need to show it to you as much as I'm sure you know it. Money is one of the biggest things that lead to divorces these days, and it's because of the power and the control that you have with money. And when you introduce this idea of, let's just split the cost, you pay for your bit, I'll pay for my bit, it creates a power dynamic in your relationship that you do not want. And so one of the things that I recommend is, and so in our counseling sessions, we always recommend to all of our couples, all accounts, share it. If you're truly saying you love this person, till death do you part.
This is, to be clear, this is for marriage.
Yeah.
All accounts shared for marriage.
Yeah, 100%. We believe that, when God created us, he created us to partner with each other, to care for one another. In fact, as Christians, we see this in the scriptures. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 20 to 31, the scripture says this: in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be unified to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. There is this responsibility, and we are here to care for each other, but when we run to the place of dividing and having pockets in our marriage, specifically about money, that's every horror story I've ever, walked someone through or pastored someone through, where it was someone was cheating or someone was doing something, underhanded. There was some level of hidden money involved in that somewhere. And so when I encourage you here to be very transparent about money in your relationship, I am not underselling that.
I think it's very easy to start small and it becomes a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So, for example, and I you don't raise your hand if this is you or if this is the family you grew up in, but there are definitely couples where, let's say, the wife likes to spend a little bit more, so she will hide the spending from her husband. And so I recall situations where, let's say, a mother would tell her kids, okay, but don't tell daddy that we bought this, and then they'd hide things or they'd sneak them in through the back door, or through the garage, or through whatever. And being in that situation, you are actually introducing some level of deception, and it's okay for you to hide things or lie to your partner. And it becomes very easy to be desensitized to that. And then the next thing you know, you are going to lie about bigger things. Mm-hmm. So that's just an aspect right there. But I was also thinking about, the idea of what it looks like to split the cost. Yeah. And when you split things 50-50 and that power dynamic that we discussed. Yeah. And it really is an aspect of just not caring for somebody selflessly.
Yeah. 100%.
When you look at the scriptures and you look at how God originally designed marriage even. And so obviously we live in the 21st century. Life is expensive. Most homes are dual income homes, and that's totally okay. But at the time when God was commanding the Israelites of this is what your relationship should look like, women were actually cared for by their parents up until they got married. And then after that, they were cared for by their husbands. The woman did not work. She was provided for fully. Yeah. And so the idea of one person's money is our money, that was very normal. And that was what God had kind of designed marriage to look like. Yeah. And so when you look at money, it shouldn't be your money and my money. It should be our money. And you care for each other, and you don't have this element of okay, well, we can't do this because you can't afford to cover your half, or, okay, well, I'll cover it for you, but then you'll pay me back later. Because I know some of us are laughing, but this does happen. Yep. I know couples, I have seen people have these kinds of conversations where they're okay, well, I can't afford to pay for our vacation. I can't afford to pay for my half. So you cover the costs and I'll make it up to you, and I'll pay it back, after we come back. And you don't want to be in a position where you are indebted to your partner, or your partner feels like you are indebted to them, and you've developed this power dynamic.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. What's number 2?
Okay, so number 2. I'm a little nervous saying it, but if you're always triggered by your partner, you may be the problem, not them.
Ooh.
So we all have baggage, and that baggage can sometimes rear its ugly head. And when I say that, there's no way that you walk into a relationship and you don't have baggage, and you don't have triggers, and you don't have previous trauma that you're working through. Nobody comes in and they're I am fully, perfectly healed and whole. That being said, if you are constantly triggered, this is probably a sign that there's a lot of baggage and a lot of work that you still need to do. There's a lot of stuff that you still need to heal from. It may also be a sign that you are just lacking grace and you struggle to forgive. So you may be somebody who's I'm actually not necessarily super triggered, but every little thing that my partner does that's wrong, I must point it out. I must make a fuss out of it because I want them to know that they're wrong. I want them to change or correct this. And it could just be a sign that you are somebody who struggles with grace, somebody who struggles with forgiveness.
Yeah.
You're not somebody who's, big on giving mercy when a partner is like seeking for forgiveness. But, we know that forgiveness prevents bitterness and resentment from forming in our hearts. And so we have to work towards how do we actually grow in forgiveness and extend grace in these areas. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 31 and 32, it says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Yep. So there's an aspect here where he's connecting forgiveness to bitterness, rage, and anger, and going, like your bitterness is the stem of it is that unforgiveness. And so when you can forgive, then you release that bitterness, you release that resentment, and you can actually get to a place where you can move forward. Along with that, like I stress this a lot when I talk to couples, but not every little thing that your partner does that bugs you needs to be addressed or discussed.
Yeah, come on.
I know there's like an aspect of like, well, should I hide this from them, or shouldn't I just be honest and share? You should be honest and you should share, but it shouldn't be hiding because you need to actually just extend grace.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that like I'm actually going to make an issue out of this because you're like, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to my partner. I'm going to extend grace to my partner. I'm going to allow them to be an imperfect person, because we are all imperfect people. I don't expect perfection from Ruben. He doesn't expect perfection from me. And if we did, that would be a really like unhealthy, toxic thing, because we're bound to fall. We are bound to be imperfect because we are human. So there's an aspect of going, okay, well, as this is somebody that I love, this is somebody that I care for, I'm going to extend grace, and I'm going to like not say expect the worst from them, but I'm going to go, okay, if something were to happen, especially small things, little things that happen, you can go, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to recognize that maybe my partner didn't mean to say the thing that he said. Maybe he didn't mean to do the thing that he did. Like maybe he actually forgot. Maybe something came up and that's why he didn't do the thing that I asked him to do. And it doesn't have to be this big thing. I remember, and I think I shared this on another Agape night, but I remember one time there was kind of like an aha moment in my head and in our relationship where I was like, instead of running to the assumption that every single time Ruben has hurt me or upset me, that he's done it intentionally, what if I run to the assumption that every single time he's done it unintentionally?
Wow. What
if every single time I gave the benefit of the doubt and I trusted him and I went, okay, my partner loves me and he doesn't want to hurt me. Yeah. And so there were times where then it was a bigger issue and I had to bring it back and go, hey, I know you might not have done this intentionally, but I just wanted to share this and it upset me. But even just beginning the conversation like that helped it go well. But also in other times, it was like, no, actually by recognizing that this may have just been a mistake or he may have just done this unintentionally, I was able to move past it and it didn't warrant a conversation. So I think it's something to be mindful of, is like not every little thing has to be brought up, especially if you are able to extend grace and you have gotten to a place where you've worked on unforgiveness in your own life.
Yeah, that's man, you're spitting bars. That's so good. Yeah, awesome. Number 3. Oh, I got to do this one? All right. You are using your relationship as a distraction to avoid God. Don't raise your hand, but let's be real. On the inside, some of us were not ready for a relationship, but we stepped into it anyways, right? Some of us actually, if we're honest with ourselves, are in this space where multiple ways to look at it. One, sometimes we get so invested in our relationship that God is an afterthought. Like God is like the cherry on top. If you got, like you got your Sunday, but you're like, let me just add the cherry on top in our relationship. And maybe that didn't start that way, but currently your relationship is about buying gifts and trying new things, new date ideas, new food spots, because, you can never not go out and try new food spots. And what else do you have to do when you're dating? So, that, or like, there's, a team in town, or there's a new like play or something. There's always something new to do, and your life just gets filled with all events and, social stuff.
And you're combining two lives together, which means you're combining two social circles and more events and more occasions, and that's just normal too.
And I'll be honest, what happens then is we kind of forget God a little bit, At one point we were like, yes, we love Jesus, but then it kind of gets derailed. And in fact, what we do is then we fill our lives with all of the things that we want in our lives, and we kind of are just avoiding God. Ultimately, we find ourselves in a place where we're kind of like, we just want a best friend, to have fun in life with. And, if that's your goal and you're like, I'm not a Christian, but I'm just here and I'm just listening, totally get that. That's fair. But if you're a Christian and you're like, okay, I believe in Jesus, then we have something else that I think we're challenged with, which is that we believe that God brings a man and a woman together for a purpose. And it's not just to enjoy each other. Absolutely, that's a huge portion of it. But it's for a deeper purpose and mission. And I find today in our world, in our very materialistic world, man, we stepped on toes today. In our very materialistic world, it's easy to get carried away with the next big thing. It's easy to get carried away with the events. It's easy to get carried away with these things and forget God in the midst of our relationship. Forget God, even not just in your relationship, but personally. Sometimes we actually lose connection with God because we're just so occupied in our relationship. You know how many times I have been in a conversation where someone was like, Pastor Ruben, I was so close to God before I met so-and-so, and now I barely get time with God because I'm always doing this and that and this and that, and work and whatever. In fact, what's really interesting is, this is like 2,000 years old. Paul the Apostle talks about this in one of his letters to the church at Corinth. He says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 33 to 34. He goes, but the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. Can I get an amen? No? All right. And his interests are divided. Can I get an amen on that one? No? All right. Everyone's like, no, it's all God and you're next. Ain't no way. It is hard. And he goes, and the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things and how to please her husband. He's saying when you get married, you got more problems because all your, what you get filled with is a lot of the baggage and the worries of how to please one another in this broken world that we are currently in. And that's just the nature of marriage and relationships. And unless you are intentionally fighting that and going against the tide of living a life just from distraction to distraction, it will eventually lead our lives just to like a place where we call ourselves Christian, but we don't really have a relationship with God. We don't have a personal one. At one point, we called ourselves Christians so that we could make sure that we marry someone who also carries the same title. Man, people are not going to like us after this one. So we carry the same title, but it's like, that's all it is. And this is a wake-up call. This is a wake-up call for you to go, man, I don't want that to be my relationship. I don't want that to be my fate. I don't want that to be my marriage. I don't want it to be just simply, this is what it is because this is where I'm at. I think today is an opportunity to go, you know what, I want something more. I don't want just to know you deeply. I want to know what God wants for us deeply and be pursuing that. And so, anyhow, that's my right.
Okay, number 4. You're fighting like children because you're communicating like children. I got to tell you. I heard
the crowd on that one.
I got to tell you, we got toddlers at home, and they fight a lot. And their fights seem pointless. They start about useless things. They escalate very quickly, and they last a very long time. And it's because they don't know how to communicate. But it's okay when a 2 and a 3 and a 4-year-old do it. The problem is there's a lot of us who are in our 30s and our 40s and even beyond, and we don't know how to communicate. And we still communicate like toddlers. We don't know how to disagree in a healthy way. Things escalate, usually not because of what we're saying, but because of how we're saying it. Yeah. We use negative tones. We use sarcasm. Even when we say we're like, it's banter or we're joking, but we use sarcasm and we hurt our partner. Yep. We don't listen well. We don't understand what is being said, even if we're trying to listen well. We don't communicate clearly. We hide our feelings, or we're unaware of our feelings, which is a whole other problem. But, you know, Scripture actually talks so clearly about communication and what that should look like. Yeah. And so I pulled up a whole bunch of verses. I'm just going to throw them out at you guys because I think you just need to see how important it is to see that Scripture talks about this so frequently. And this is just a few examples. So when it comes to listening, James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. It talks about being constructive and encouraging. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, Ephesians 4:29. When it talks about how we speak, making sure that we speak kindly to each other, speaking with grace. Let your conversations always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone, Colossians 4:6. The impact of our words. In Proverbs, it says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. It talks about controlling your tongue. Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues, Proverbs 10:19. It says to be truthful and not lie. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, Ephesians 4:25. So this one is a big one, especially for people who like to say, like, oh, I'm fine. Like, what's wrong? I'm fine. No, but what's wrong? No, nothing. It's fine. But what's wrong? No, it's good. It's fine. If something's wrong, say it. Be truthful. Maintain a good heart. But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart in Matthew 15:18. And finally, use our words to encourage. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up. 1 Thessalonians 5:11. I don't see anywhere that it says, you know, hide your feelings, tell people things that you don't actually feel, be dishonest about your feelings, you know, don't listen, speak up, raise your voice, be sarcastic, be angry, be whatever. It never uses any of that language, and yet that's all we know how to do for some of us. And so we need to really check ourselves. Like, are we communicating properly? And so we talk about, like, we've done a lot of sessions with you guys here and even in private counseling sessions about communication, because the Bible holds it really highly. Yeah. It talks about it so frequently, about the power of the tongue and about the way that we communicate. And yet for some of us, this is still such a big struggle. So yes, we may have never learned how to communicate, but it's not too late. Yeah. There's a lot that we can do. There are little things and small steps that we can take so that we can communicate better and so that we can actually decrease the level of fights that we have. A lot of people come to us and they're like, we fight all the time. Are we incompatible? And I'm like, no, you are poor communicators. Learn to communicate with one another, and you're probably not going to feel that incompatibility. Yeah. It's the reason, one of the things we notice is people come to us and they're like, we had a 10-hour fight yesterday. We fought for 10 hours. And we've been there. We fought for days. And most of the time, it's like it started with something so small, and the person just runs to an assumption, and then they let the assumption be the reason that they're emotional, and then because they're emotional, they say something that they don't mean, and then the other person responds with something, and it's like, if you had cleared up the assumption, we probably wouldn't have gotten into a 10-hour fight. If you had communicated clearly, if you had listened or tried to understand, if you had asked some questions, maybe it wouldn't have led to that 10-hour fight. So communication is so key, and I think a lot of us are getting this part wrong.
Yeah. It's really good. Really good. Next one. Now, this one might seem kind of out of pocket, but go with me here. If you can't love those who disagree with you outside of a relationship, you probably won't do it in one either. A lot of us have this thought that we can go through life and we can do whatever we want to and treat people however we want to, and somehow, magically, in a relationship, it's going to work out. The truth is, and this is actually a word of the wise if you're dating, to like observe the other person, because it's actually, it's good for you. But the way people treat people outside of a relationship in the most like basic areas and ways with the relationships that they already have in life is probably how they will also treat their most dearest one. What I found, Dora and I, we've been married now a few years, and what I have found is that, why are you smiling?
I'm resisting the urge to ask you how many years.
It's not worth it, but my point is, what was my point? I forgot my point.
We've been married a few years, and you have found.
Yes, thank you. We've been married a few years, and what I have found is that the person you love the most, oftentimes the person you also hurt the most. The person who's closest to you, and actually this is an analogy that got us through our dating phase and into engagement, because we were having some really rough fights. Like I remember how many nights would be in the car right outside your like parents' house, but like we don't want to leave like on a bad note, because you're like, but what if this ends here? We can't do that. No, like let's try and figure it out. So Dora and I are both like type A people, so we're like we want to say everything, and we want to get our point across. But we're also the people that are like, but we don't want to just move on to the next day without solving this. Hence 10-hour plus fights, which like I'm kidding you not, like we have at least a dozen under our belt in the first year of marriage, honestly. But what I learned, and an analogy that really helped us, and I honestly believe this was God sent, that when you're learning to dance and you're not someone who knows how to dance, you're most likely going to be stepping on that person's toe a little bit. In case you don't know, this is a great experiment to try. Pick someone, try and dance without choreographing it, and you're going to step on each other's toe if you really are trying. In relationship, it's what's going to happen. The person that you're closest to is probably the person that you're going to step on their toes the most. Yeah. But as you learn each other's rhythms and patterns and learn to grow with each other and figure each other out, you eventually learn how to, jive together and know how to, move to each other's rhythm or whatever. The point that I'm trying to make is that it's really important to recognize right now where you are as a single person, if that's where you are at. How you treat people matters, because it's the habits that you're carrying into a relationship with you, right? Those habits you're carrying with you into those relationships. And if you're currently dating and you're like, this person treats their parents terribly and treats their siblings terribly and treats their families terribly and is constantly gossiping and speaking poorly and just so negative, let me be real with you. When you're married, it's not gonna be much nicer with you. It's gonna be awful. In fact, it's one of the reasons why right here, right now, it is so important to work through those emotions, to go, you know what? I have someone who I disagree with. I have someone who I'm wrestling with, learning to love them despite that. Because in marriage, you will have disagreements. You will have fights. You will have quarrels. And learning how to accept people for who they are, learning how to sway with them, learning how to forgive, learning how to go, you know what? I'm going to release that. I'm going to compromise that, is so important, because that is what will help you, honestly, last in a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to disagreeing, I think a lot of people in the world take a stance of like, well, if we are on two opposite sides of an issue, then we must be like enemies. We must hate each other, or we must keep our distance from each other. And the truth is that we can choose to actually love people we disagree with. And there's a way that we can love while still disagreeing and holding that tension of like, you and I may not see eye to eye on this, but that doesn't mean that I don't love you. And as Christians, we're called to love all people. Yeah. But in Luke chapter 6, it says it so in such strong language. It says, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. And if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Because even sinners love those who love them. Yeah. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. The idea there being that there is a way that you can choose to love, and that love, that Christ-like love, extends beyond disagreements, extends beyond, we are completely polar opposite sides of whatever it could be. Like, it could be religion, it could be politics, it could be like socioeconomic status, it could be race, it could be so many different things, but people hold to these standards and they're like, well, we disagree, so therefore you and I are different and we can't be friends, or we can't be whatever. And I think that's absolutely not true. I think it's absolutely anti-Jesus, anti the Bible. And it's an attitude that we will find that we carry into our relationships. If we can't disagree and in a loving way, then how much worse would it be when you are constantly disagreeing with somebody? Yeah. Because that's what relationships are like. Ruben and I are very similar people now, because when you're in a relationship, you tend to grow together and you tend to become more alike. But we also still disagree a lot. We disagree on parenting, we disagree on finances, we disagree on simple things like food choices and meal prep. We disagree on how we want to spend our time. We disagree on so many things, but we have to learn to love each other despite the disagreements.
Yeah. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get across here is there are some people in your life that are probably rubbing you the wrong way, that you're probably just trying to avoid, that God has placed in your life, a.k.a. you didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your siblings. You didn't choose your cousins, okay? I truly believe, somebody snapped at that, that's wild. I truly believe that God puts these people in our lives to help us learn, grow. Lessons that I think we should be learning in those relationships, some of us, we run away from it. And we don't realize it, but this lesson that we should have learned in the context that we were in, we run away from it only to push the lesson down a little bit later when you could have learned it earlier in life. And so I'm encouraging you to take the time you have right now to learn the lessons that God's trying to teach you through whatever your context might be. And let me be real with you. It's going to help you if you learn the lessons that you got to learn right now in the relationships with the people that you disagree with right now, where you're at. It will help you truly love the person, whether you're with or will eventually be with in the future. So,
okay, point number 6. You might not like to admit it, but you are wrong a lot more often than you think. So a lot of us struggle to recognize our mistakes and apologize because it takes a lot of humility. And we often think that, we're thinking about what we deserve and what we want rather than thinking about the other person. So it's very selfish. We're like, well, I don't want to apologize. I want to be right. I want my way. I want this. I want that. Or like, I deserve whatever. I don't deserve to apologize to you. I don't deserve to do whatever. I don't deserve this kind of treatment from you. I deserve better. And we are very stuck on what we want and what we deserve rather than thinking about what the other person wants or deserves and what the other person's feelings are. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3-4, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Yeah, amen. One of the things that I find is that when those triggers come up, when we butt heads on something that may be a little bit gray, a little bit controversial, we're like, oh yeah, you said this in a way that I didn't like. Well, this is my tone, and if you don't like it, too bad. This is how I talk. And we walk away with that attitude rather than going, oh, I hurt my partner. I said it in a tone that they might not like. Maybe I need to check myself and check my tone. And we get more defensive and we put our guard up. One of the things I like to think about is, did I hurt this person, whether intentionally or unintentionally? So I ask myself that question. It's like, did I actually hurt this person? Even if I didn't mean to. And I push myself a bit further and I go, is it possible that they were hurt about something that maybe it wouldn't have hurt me, but they were hurt about it? Maybe our pain tolerance is a little bit different. You know, when we talk about physical pain, it's like, I'm going to be real. My pain tolerance is very low. My pain tolerance is very low in comparison to someone like Ruben. His pain tolerance is very high. If I burn myself, I will sit there crying about it for days. He will have like a massive burn from the oven, and he's just like, yeah, it's fine. And he walks around, he does his, you know, his normal thing. But just because my pain tolerance is lower does not mean I wasn't hurt. And I think that's something that when it comes to emotional wounds and emotional baggage and hurt, we don't see it that way. We just look at it and we're like, well, that was something small. It was something stupid, dumb. It was something like meaningless. I don't know why you're so upset about this. And we belittle each other's hurts rather than going, hey, you know what? If it's something that hurt my partner, maybe I need to add value to it. Maybe it's something that I need to actually, you know, perceive differently and recognize where I may have hurt them. Yeah. There, you know, don't get me wrong. This is not something where I'm saying like, you must always apologize if your partner is upset and you've always done something wrong. That's not what I'm saying. There are definitely times where people have not done something wrong, and I don't want you to fall into a trap of like, every time your partner is upset, you run to, okay, I must say sorry, because A, it makes your apology meaningless, and B, it also could lead down the trap of emotional manipulation. Yeah. But I do think it's something to recognize that there are probably a lot of times that you need to apologize that you are not even recognizing. There are probably times where you might just have to, it's helpful for you to recognize that even in a small way, you may have hurt your partner, even if it wasn't your intent. Because just because it wasn't your intent doesn't mean it wasn't the result. Yeah. So I may not have intended it, but it resulted in Ruben being hurt. So I have to be mindful of that. Yeah. And if we intend to be people like Jesus, if that's our goal, if that's our heart, then I'm going to just point out two things. A, Jesus was always humble. He never put up his pride. He never was like, oh, like, look at me, blah, blah, blah. He was very humble, and he came to serve. On top of that, his heart is always reconciliation and peace. Yeah. So when it comes to our relationships, I think instead of thinking, you know, is this good for me? Think to yourself, is this good for our relationship? Yeah. Is this the right thing? Is this the way that I would honor God in our relationship in this moment? Romans 12:18, it says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Romans 14:19, it says, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. If that is our goal, if our heart is to be like Jesus, then humility and reconciliation. I think those are two things that we can't let go of. And I think they're two things that we are often too stubborn about.
Yeah, there's like this underlying theme of selflessness that you have to carry into any relationship. And I think it actually benefits you if you work on that before you're ever in a relationship. You walk in better prepared to succeed. And if you're already dating, if you're already in a relationship, if you're already married, you know, it's not too late, because the truth is it's a constant learning process regardless. But yeah, definitely encourage you guys to learn where you guys are at. That's all we had, right?
Yeah, that's everything.
Awesome. So we're gonna break for a snack. Feel free to say hello to your neighbor, and you can actually send in questions, because we're gonna take some live Q&A. If it's related to the topic, feel free, or if it's just something totally different, absolutely, just send in the questions.
Relationship related.
Relationship, yeah. I mean, if you ask theological questions, please, we'll listen. But anyhow, yeah. All right, we'll see you in a bit.